Some passengers, as well as drivers, have been complaining on the ongoing renovation in some lorry stations, which have caused an inconvenience to them. From what we see and hear, because of the exercises that are going on to improve the conditions in these lorry stations, the drivers have been moved out of the stations. And because there's no place that is really spacious to hold them all, they have scattered to different points in the vicinities and in the markets which are close to these stations. The problem is, because they are at places where they are not known to be, it is hard sometimes for individuals to locate them. Another problem is, because they are in places where their space is not enough and there's so much crowd, it makes things very stressful for the drivers as well as the passengers. We spoke to a man who was very disgruntled about the exercise, and when we asked him why, he explained. According to him, when he came to the station to take his vehicle home, he had no idea that there was such an exercise going on. So after walking around and looking for the vehicles, he decided to ask around to see where his vehicle may be loading. When he was directed to a place, he went there only to see that it wasn't where his vehicle was, but it was other vehicles which were loading there. So after getting tired of walking, he asked another person for help, and he was directed to where his vehicles normally load after the exercise. Unfortunately for him, when he got there, because of some little problem and fracas that was going on there, his vehicles had moved from that location to a different place to be loading their cars. And after finding out, he realized that he had to do more walking. So he walked and walked till he finally got to where his vehicle was. He told us that when he calculated the way he walked from place to place, if he had used that walking from the station to his house, he would have gotten there. At the end of the day, he entered the vehicle and got home, but he was very tired. He said he was so tired the next day he wasn't able to go to work early, and he was penalized for it. We were speaking to some drivers too, who expressed certain concerns. They said the exercise was a good one, but they were hoping that the exercise was finished sooner than later, because it was giving them too much troubles. Some of the mates also added that because they were in places where it was hard for them to be located, they had to be moving about, shouting louder than they used to, and this was causing them more energy and more stress on their bodies. When we asked how, the mate explained that on a normal day, he would use the normal food he purchases to, do his work activities and shout and go about work. But today, because of the many movements and the many shouting, he realizes that the food in his stomach does not really take too long to be digested, and before he realizes, he's hungry again. We also asked some of the drivers what they thought about the exercise that was going on, and they were glad to admit that it was going to improve a lot, because previously, anytime it rained, the whole lorry stations and the markets that were close by became very muddy. We spoke to one particular driver in Medina, a suburb in the city, a place where people frequent a lot and are frequently moving to and fro from. And according to the driver in Medina, anytime it rained, whether it was heavy or it was a little rainfall, the place was so muddy and so wet, and pools of water gathered in different places. He claimed that because the place was so untidy, their vehicles were made dirty, and those passengers who walked through the mud to come into the vehicles brought in so much dirt that they had to always clean their vehicles after every trip that was made. In times where they had to quickly load passengers, they did not have enough time to clean up, and those new passengers that got inside were unhappy about the dirt. They also explained that some of the roads were not helping them, the roads that were linked to the stations and even the roads in the stations, and it was also contributing to the breakdown of their vehicle. But now that the renovation is going on, they will be very grateful to see a change where their cars wouldn't be as dirty as they used to be, and where the roads will be good enough for them to even lie down on the ground and do certain checks and repairs on their cars. For those who have been wondering what the toll booths located in the stations were for, this will bring an answer to their questions. Because in the past, many were asking, how come these toll booths were collecting all these monies and for all these years nothing was done in the station? It was a bit of a concern because we noticed that always before a vehicle will come out of the station, they will be issued a ticket and money should be paid. The question is, why were all these monies collected and yet no change was seen in the station? As to why that was not so in the past, we cannot tell. But what we can say is today, there's a difference. Clearly, these monies are playing a part in the work that is being done in these lorry stations. It is also good to note that not only are these monies used for such renovation works, but there are some things that are being catered for with these monies. There are some times where certain rubbish has to be seen to, and many other things which we'll not go into mentioning that have to be paid for, and these monies sometimes help. Now that this renovation exercise is going to be a good thing, we do hope that the lorry station and those in charge of taking care of them would implement a maintenance plan. We say this because some lorry stations which were made very well in the beginning have now started deteriorating, though they were not as muddy as these stations. Maintenance was not put in place, and because of that, structures are dilapidating. We are seeing certain places getting weary, cranky, and rusty. For these new stations, and for these stations which are now renovating and concreting their floors and making sure that things are neat and clean, we would advise that they ensure a certain renovation and maintenance scheme that will be on schedule and in a way that it will be frequented to prevent big damages from occurring. For example, if a 3-month plan is implemented, whereby every 3 months maintenance is done, it will go a long way to prevent a serious damage that will require the whole station to be moved out again for this damage to be seen to. Another area of concern is the drainage system in these lorry stations. We find it amazing that sometimes when these lorry stations are done, they don't give the right and adequate drainage system for water to flow out, and this causes stagnant waters, which brings problems in the stations. especially in areas where people sell food close to the station. It becomes very problematic and unhygienic. We will therefore advise that in all the lorry stations where these renovations are going on, adequate drainage systems should be employed so that when it rains and when there's a little flood of water rushing through, it wouldn't stay in these lorry stations, but it will be channeled into the bigger gutters which are around. And then there's also another very major place of concern which we should not neglect. This area of concern has to do with waste. The waste that is produced by the drivers and the passengers and all those who are present in the lorry station. We are looking at human waste like urine and excreta and how well they have been made and put in place. There are some lorry stations that have the right public toilet facilities, and there are some which don't, but have some facilities that are situated far from the lorry stations. We should look at having the right ones close by so that those in the station are not forced to defecate very close to places where it will be unhygienic. We should also look at the renovation and the maintenance that is being done in these public toilet facilities. Are they kept clean? Is there a regular maintenance scheme that has been employed to make sure that death and diseases from these places don't spread? Or is it just a structure that is made for people to come and use and spoil the place anyhow and then leave? Some time ago, we went into one of these public toilet facilities and we were shocked to see how bad the place was. We don't know whether to blame those who use the place or those who are not cleaning the place, because sometimes when you look in the bowl of the toilet, you see excreta scattered all over. And while this was appalling, that was not all. Sometimes before you even enter the water closet room to use the place, you'll notice that there's a lot of urine on the ground. We were wondering whether the people who owned and managed these facilities did not have the right cleaners, or if the cleaners were just not doing their jobs the right way. Because if a person can come into a facility and step in urine and mistakenly touch things that are dirty around, he can easily be infected. We should also look at the flow of water and the availability of soap in these facilities as these renovations are going on. The lorry stations are places which are very busy, especially those close to the markets, and it's advisable that the right sanitizers, the right soaps and the right disinfectants be put and placed in these public toilet facilities and in areas where it is needed. In the meantime, for those of you who have no idea about the renovation that is going on, you are asked to recheck and know where your vehicles, which you normally take home and to work and to other places, have moved to. Because if you go to some stations like Medina, you'll note that they are not at those same places anymore. And because there are different and many cars that are scattered all over, it is sometimes hard to locate them. Thank you for listening. We can't wait for the lorry stations to have a full completion of the projects being done there. We do hope them the best, so that it will go on well with the drivers, the passengers, and all those who use the lorry stations. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.